Well, first of all, thank you for waiting around for me. I really feel badly. I didn't realize, this is only my second time in Ogden. I've never spent much time up here, so I didn't calculate the amount of time it would take, especially during rush hour. So I think I broke more traffic laws than I have since I was 16. So luckily I didn't get pulled over. Well, it's great to be here. My great-grandfather actually went to school at Weber State, and he was a true example for me. I only knew him when I was a child, so I don't really know him. I didn't really know him that well, but he went on to do a PhD at the University of Southern California, and someone who I really admire. He was an entrepreneur himself, and so I have a special tie with Weber State, so it's fun to be here. So one of the things you heard in this intro was a really cool trip that I did about a year ago, and it was a really kind of a life-changing experience for me. I had grown up in the developing world, and from the time I was a child, I loved exploring. I grew up. My dad was an adventurer, so when I was 4 years old, my family left the United States. And I grew up doing things like building my own raft and floating down the Amazon River, fishing for piranha with my dad, or climbing up volcanic mountains and getting into volcanic craters, going and surviving on uninhabited islands, spearfishing with our own homemade spears. So I grew up loving adventure, and I always had this fascination with Cuba because we couldn't go as Americans. So when I was in grad school, I ended up going to Cuba to do my master's thesis. And I was able to get permission by the State Department to go and visit, which was really cool. But I decided I wanted to go back someday, and I wanted to go from Cuba to Florida, just like so many thousands of people had done from Cuba, escaping. And so it took a few years of planning and a lot of training. I would wake up at 3 in the morning, on Mondays, Wednesdays, and I would paddle till probably 10 a.m. And then on Saturdays, I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and paddle till it was nighttime. Sometimes paddling all the way through the night, so I knew what it felt like to paddle when I was exhausted and tired. And so went through all this training, which was pretty excruciating, but with this big goal in mind of going from Cuba to Florida in my kayak without ever getting out of the kayak. And so I planned this trip. I did this. I was paddling with my cousin. We were paddling partners, and this perfectly beautiful turquoise ocean turned inky black at night. The first night, it was 124 miles, so it was 2 nights that we had to paddle, and we couldn't take breaks. I mean, there was about 8 hours into the paddle, we stopped to put lights on the back of our kayak and to grab a bite to eat. We stopped for about 30 minutes, and we went backwards and sideways almost an entire mile. So that's when we realized we could never stop paddling. And so from then on, whether you're going to the bathroom or eating, you kept paddling while you're doing it. So it was pretty intense. But that first night, as the water turned inky black, we started seeing lightning striking all around us, and there was no moon. It was pitch black, and we had a support boat that was escorting us across. And the captain of this boat started to get scared because he couldn't see us. Even with our little light, we were behind. There were huge waves, and so these waves were 6 or 7 feet tall, and we would be behind a wave, half the time, so he could never keep track of us. And finally, he just yelled out that he couldn't see us and that we needed to get right next to his boat. Otherwise, we were going to get lost. And if we got lost, it was over. I mean, there was no way anyone was going to find us. And so we ended up hugging the side of his boat as closely as we could. And after a few hours, it was hard. It was hard to control our kayak as it was getting thrown around in the ocean. And my cousin and I had made a commitment to each other that we didn't want to have anything to do with the support boat. We committed to each other we wouldn't even touch the support boat no matter what. And so a huge wave took us, and it slammed us up against the side of the boat. And it freaked us out. I still remember my cousin screaming as we hit the side of this boat. But what we should have done is taken our hands and pushed as hard as we could away from the boat, to push ourselves away so that we could paddle away from it. But because we'd made this commitment to each other that we didn't want to touch the boat, we just let it slam us against the boat, and we just kind of like stared at it. And there's no way to paddle away from the boat when your paddle can't get in between the boat and your boats, right? So we just sat there, and then a second wave took us and slammed us up again, right as this catamaran was coming down from a wave, and it smashed our kayak and threw us underneath the boat. And we were hanging upside down in this kayak. We're strapped in, right, with our spray skirts, and we start ripping them off so we can breathe, grabbing all of our gear at the same time so it wouldn't sink or float away in the dark. And as we kind of pop our heads up underneath this boat, we start hearing everyone screaming, "Cut the engines, because they like knew that they could run over us. And we spent the next 2 hours trying to salvage our kayak, and it ultimately ended up breaking in half and sinking to the bottom of the ocean. And I have never been so disappointed in my entire life. All those years of training and of hard work and preparing, and we'd failed. And because we were so stupid to set this rule about not touching that boat. Fortunately, our support boat had an extra kayak, and so it took a lot of courage to get back in. I admittedly have PTSD of the ocean a little bit. It was pretty terrifying, the entire experience, and but we got the courage to jump back in the kayak and immediately get as far away as we could. The first attempt, we actually rolled the kayak again as the wave slammed us up against the boat, so it was a pretty crazy time, but I learned some incredibly valuable lessons. And one of those things is that sometimes we have a big goal in life, and we let some small silly distractions get in the way of completing the bigger goal. And we should never have been so weird that we couldn't touch the boat and push away from it. And so hopefully in your guys' lives, make sure you have that big goal in mind. And don't let little distractions keep you from accomplishing that bigger goal. So this is my family. This is when we lived in the Dominican Republic. This is me. That's when I had hair. I woke up one morning, all my hair was laying on my pillow, and it was like, that's actually not how it happened, but so I grew up loving Latin America. It was a place that I had spent my entire childhood, and ended up serving a Mormon mission back also down in South America. So I had a real love for this place. And when I was in college, I decided I wanted to go have an experience in Latin America. And so I found this internship, a really cool internship in Peru. And I went to a small city called Cusco, which is near Machu Picchu, the lost city of the Incas. And when I was in Cusco, the first thing I did is I went and bought a meal. And I went and sat down on a bench in the main plaza, and I started eating this food. And all these little kids started running up to me, trying to sell me things. And I'm sure many of you have had that happen as you've traveled. But given that I grew up in Latin America, I really connected with these kids. And I started joking around with them a little bit. And after a while, they all ran off, except for one little boy. And he sat next to me on his shoe shining kit and kept insisting to shine my shoes. And this kid was persistent, but it took me a while to finally convince him that it wasn't possible to shine tennis shoes. And so he finally backed off the shoe shining sales pitch, but he kept sitting next to me on this shoe shining kit, and I finally realized maybe he was sitting here because he was hungry. So I offered him the rest of my food, and I had never actually seen somebody eat like that before. It was heartbreaking. So that night as I got dinner, I decided I'm going to go look for this little boy again. His name was Edgar. He's 9 years old. And he had a hole in the butt of his pants, but with no underwear on. So it was really easy to spot him from a distance. And so I took my dinner and I went into the main plaza and started looking for Edgar. And straight away I found him. And when I gave him this food, he took it and he ran back and started sharing it with his friends, which for me was so touching. I knew how hungry he was, and for him to go share it was just amazing. And this became a daily ritual. It became something that I did every day. I looked for Edgar, and it was the highlight of my day every day. My last night in Cusco, as I was walking home, close to midnight, I stumbled upon Edgar. and he was sleeping on the street, on the sidewalk, with his sweater pulled over his knees, trying to stay warm. And I woke him up and asked him why he wasn't home. I didn't know much about his family, but I did know he had a family. And he told me that he couldn't go home because someone had stolen his shoe shining kit. And he knew that if he went home, his dad was going to beat him, because he said that he was the one responsible for feeding his family, because his dad was an alcoholic. So I took the small amount of cash that I had, which wasn't very much, but I gave him the cash that I had, and that night I could hardly sleep. I just laid in my room thinking about this little boy and the life that he lived. And so the next morning I got on a bus and I was leaving Cusco for the last time, and I looked out the window of the bus, and as I looked out the window I saw Edgar. And this is when I took this. And he was outside the bus, and he ran next to the bus waving goodbye to me, and had a big bag of candy that he'd bought that he was now selling in the streets. And so he was a true entrepreneur, which I just love. And I was on that bus, and I made a commitment to myself that I was going to find a way to use my life to be in service of others, to help kids like Edgar. So I started looking at how I could do that. And I was inspired by a man named Steve Gibson, an entrepreneur who had sold his business, and instead of going off and retiring and living just this lavish lifestyle, he went and moved to the Philippines with his wife, and they bought a large home, and then they moved into a small one-bedroom apartment, and in this large home they started housing 25 poor Filipinos at a time, and they would teach them for 2 months how to start their own businesses. And I tried to convince Steve to let me come work for him when I graduated from college. And he ended up telling me that I really shouldn't work for him, and that what I really should do is become an entrepreneur, that I should start my own business. And he said, then down the road, 10 or 20 years later, he's like, you're going to be able to find your own way of making an impact in the world. So I decided to do that. I decided I was going to become an entrepreneur. So I went and I started exploring ideas, and I ended up coming up with an idea with my cousin, which was an idea of building our own business. And I had this idea of making our own brand of pool tables. And I did not know anything about pool tables. I didn't even know there was slate underneath the felt of a pool table, which is like one of the most basic concepts of billiards. And so, but I believed that we could do this. So we went and bought tickets to China. We flew to China. Neither of us had, we didn't speak Chinese or hadn't been to China, but I'd Googled pool table factory China and found some factories, and it was that simple. So we flew to China and started finding these factories, and we started selling them online, and we ended up doing $1 million in sales our first year. And ultimately, we became the largest retailer of pool tables in the United States. And it was a pretty small industry, so it wasn't really that impressive, but it was an amazing experience for a first-time entrepreneur. And we had retail stores on the East Coast and on the West Coast, and just really learned how to build a team. But we decided we didn't want to be the pool table guys forever, so we decided to sell the business and to go back to business school. And my cousin had always wanted to go to Harvard. I'd always wanted to go to Wharton. And so we applied to our dream schools, and we were lucky enough that we got in. And so we both went to school at the same time, and we started exploring what we wanted to do next. We decided that we wanted to work together again, that we wanted to do another business together. So the first year in business school, it's 2 years. The first year we spent brainstorming ideas. And we went through a really disciplined process of ideation. I think one of the biggest mistakes I see young entrepreneurs make is that you're so anxious to start a business that you just take the first idea or second idea that you come up with, and you go put all your money into it, all your time into it. You're willing to give it the next 5 or 7 years of your life. But you weren't disciplined about coming up with the best idea. And so we wanted to be disciplined about that. So we came up with 60 ideas during the first year of school. And then we took those 60 ideas and we went out to Silicon Valley in the summer between the first and second year of school. And we vetted and tested those ideas. We took the 60 ideas and cut them down to 4, and then we spent the bulk of the summer on those 4 ideas. I took 2, my cousin took 2, and we started testing them. And at the end of the summer, we decided that we identified a business that we thought was going to be massive, that we believed we could really go build. And so the business was moving down to Brazil and starting an e-commerce business selling baby products. And so I knew about a company in the US called diapers.com. I'd met the founder a number of years earlier. He was also a Wharton grad. And he'd built this amazing business that ended up getting bought by Amazon for $540 million. So I knew this model worked. And I also knew Brazil was ready for something like this. They had about 40% internet penetration, which was this magic number in my mind, where it wasn't so saturated that there were a ton of businesses already online, but it was big enough that there was a market to go build a business in. And so we moved down to Brazil and learned Portuguese and started building this business. And so within 18 months of our launch, we went from 4 employees to 300 employees. We raised $40 million, and the business has since raised over $50 million in venture capital. And in a lot of ways, it was a dream come true. It was everything that I wanted in life. I was back down in Latin America. My 2 daughters were speaking Portuguese in an international school, surrounded by people with different backgrounds and speaking different languages. We were building this really cool business. And at the same time, I knew I needed to leave. And my investors and my partner, no one quite understood why. But it came down to this experience that I'd had with Edgar. And I knew this promise that I'd made, and I felt like I wasn't doing my part yet. I needed to find a way that I could make a real impact in the world. And so I decided the way that I could do that was by building a business, because that's the only thing I knew how to do. It was like, okay, I should go build a business, but where the ethos behind the brand is helping others and giving back to the world. So I moved back to the US, and I decided that I was going to start a business in the outdoor industry. I loved the outdoors, I loved adventure, and thought if I could build a brand in the outdoor industry that could inspire other people to go out and do good, I could have a much bigger impact than if I just did something on my own. So I moved back and started a business called Cotopaxi. Cotopaxi is the name of a volcano in Ecuador where I lived as a kid. And it's a special place to me. So I named the company that. We stuck a llama in the logo because I felt it was really brandable, and I love llamas. I lived in Ecuador and Peru and Bolivia for a lot of my life, so this was an animal that I thought was pretty rad, and turns out they are pretty cool animals. So we kind of built this brand, and we launched about 2.5 years ago. I don't want to go, I know I arrived late. Does this end at 6:50? Is that right? Okay. Maybe I'll do this really quickly. I want to show you guys a couple things that we're doing that are unique for our brand. So this is a very saturated space, right? There are a ton of outdoor brands. So what are we doing to make our brand different, to differentiate ourselves from others? And the way we're doing that is by building the social impact into everything that we do. Our slogan is Gear for Good. We use our business to go do good in the world. We also make gear that lasts for good. So we make the highest end gear in the market. And the way we do good is we do it in a number of different ways. We donate a percentage of our profits and revenues to have social impact around the world. We focus on 3 pillars of impact: education, healthcare, and livelihoods. These are 3 pillars that are inextricably attached to pulling people out of poverty. We also use our supply chain, so our purchasing power, to go have impact on lives. And so I'm going to share maybe a couple quick stories here that will allow you to understand what I'm talking about.
We're in the Philippines right now. We've been working specifically on the production of a new product of ours called the Del Dia, a backpack designed by the sewers of the factory. They're responsible for choosing everything from the thread color to the fabric colors, the colorway of the backpack. The only instruction we gave them was that no bag should be alike.
We choose those colors because we think that those colors, when matched together, will result with a nice bag.
It's made from excess material, so this is material that's either going to go to a landfill or just sit on the shelf. We decided to incorporate that into a bag.
The most exciting part on the Del Dia is the process. Each person has its own free will to pick the colors. They can apply what they are feeling that day to create the bag.
What's your favorite color combination?
Violet and red.
The Del Dia is special because when the customer buys it, they're actually buying a one-off product. It was custom made.
Kasi yung bag ko maganda.
So, anong kulay ang pinakagusto mo dyan?
Gusto ko yung red, kasi sign ng love yun. Yung mga Pilipino kasi mapagmahal masyado eh.
Gusto ko mga dark color eh. Parang masayang tingnan ba? Nakakaalis ng stress, nakakaalis ng pagod. Pag nakita mo talaga yung bag, pag yung mga dark color na ganun, napapatawa ka na. Talaga napapa-smile ka na.
It shows how creative people can be when given a chance. All we did was give them the opportunity to do something special, and they excelled at it. It was cool to see them kind of let go for a little while and just have fun while they're working. The function of product design is to make people happy, and I believe that it can make people happy on both sides of the equation. It can make people in the supply chain happy, and it can make people in the consumer chain happy. And I think the Daldia proves that that can happen.
Okay, so that's one cool story, and I don't know what bags you guys had raffled off. Were they these ones? Oh, awesome. Okay, so one-of-a-kind bags. I mean, awesome. Hey, did you get one?
Yes, I did.
You are awesome. Lucky you. All right. So I didn't know you were old enough to go to college. That's amazing. That's right. Okay, so so we use our supply chain to have impact. This is another story. I'm not going to play the video right now just because we don't have time. But I lived in Bolivia for a number of years, and it's a place I really love. And the people, it's one of the poorest countries in the Western Hemisphere. There's a lot of communities in the Andes that they ranch llamas, they farm llamas. And they make about $100 a year on average, these families do. And so they live in extreme poverty. And we decided that we wanted to find a way to help these families. And so we've started developing some products where we could use llama wool. And we have, in fact, my jacket over there, instead of using synthetic insulation or down, we actually use llama wool. And we buy this llama wool from all these communities. We're able to exponentially increase their annual income. And then we make this really rad jacket full of llama, which who doesn't want that, right? So, but we have products that tell stories and that connect people somewhere else in the world with us, the users of the product, which is pretty powerful. And we found that we can really make an impact in the world. How many here know about the Questival? Okay. I'm going to play this really quick. So when we launched the brand, we knew we had to create a unique experience. It wasn't about just selling product, because we know that millennials, like you guys, you care more about experiences than you care about things. And so we truly wanted to build a brand that was more about an experience, an adventure, than it was about a backpack or a jacket. And so we came up with this idea of running what we call the Questival, which is a 24-hour adventure race. And we launched the first Questival the day of our launch. The day we turned on the Cotopaxi website, we had the first Questival. And this is what it is all about. So you form a team of up to 6 people, and every one of the people on the team, as a part of the registration, they get one of our backpacks. So you see every person doing the race is wearing one of our bags.
Okay guys, it's here.
So there's hundreds of different challenges that you're choosing from, and we end up having thousands of people at every one of the events. And then you can spend the 24 hours going out in the outdoors, adventuring, giving service in the community, doing random things like taking a selfie with a llama or milking a mammal. And people are documenting this all on social media throughout the event. That's a real worm. That's one of the challenges. And then the winners we end up sending on these like epic international trips. So So the events are amazing. We're doing, this year we did 15 of them around the country. Next year we're doing 50 of them. So Basically every major city in the US and Canada is going to be having a Questival in their city. And we end up having between 1,000 and 4,000, 5,000 people show up at each one of these events. And the events aren't made for us to make money. We actually end up breaking even on the events. But what that means is that we actually just created all this marketing and seeded all these influencers in their community for free. And they're promoting our brand. They become evangelists of the brand. They tell all their friends about us, and it doesn't cost us anything. So it's basically free marketing. In fact, some of the events actually make a little bit of money. So when you kind of add up the whole year, the events are profitable. And so it's kind of marketing that pays us to market, which is a pretty unique proposition for a brand. And so we have events here in Utah, so you guys will have to check it out. We had one in October, so you just missed that one. You have to keep an eye out for the calendar. But definitely something that's kind of a life-changing experience that you can do with your friends. And you'll see more in 24 hours in Utah than you've seen probably living here your whole lives. So it's pretty amazing. To kind of wrap things up, a couple of quick stories. So I was mentioned that I'm on this council with the United Nations, and it's been a pretty amazing experience. I work really closely with refugees here in Utah and have since we started the business. We employ refugees. If you order something on our website, you'll get a handwritten thank you card that's written by a teenage refugee here in Utah that goes through a program that we've put together where they learn job skills, they learn how to open up a bank account. I teach them about leadership. Our whole team rallies around these teens and helps them. And then they write these thank you cards. So it's a really cool program. But as part of this role in the UN, we actually are working with refugees, the 8 of us on the council. And so we went to Jordan on the border of Syria a couple months ago. And I was able to meet refugees and spend several days working with them and working with refugee entrepreneurs. And it was both inspiring and heartbreaking to see they left their country with nothing, not even a spoon. And so it's pretty inspiring to see the lives that they've recreated in these camps. And one of my favorite parts was actually meeting the kids. And so, when they see me, I look pretty different from them. I'm tall and bald and white, and they would come up and want to see what I was all about. And, they immediately started grabbing my hands. And with my daughters, I do this thing where they kind of run up my legs. I don't know if you guys did that with your dads or anything, but they'd run up your legs and then flip over. And they all started doing this, and they all did this huge line, all these kids, and they would do it, and they'd walk up and they'd take off their shoes or their sandals before they'd walk up my body, which I thought was really nice. But I had just like these dusty footprints all over my body by the end, and just a really touching experience. And it really kind of helped me realize the urgency of the issue. The average person lives in a refugee camp for 17 years. So these kids, they're likely going to spend their entire childhood and into their adult life in this refugee camp. There is an urgent need for us to do something. And when I got home that night, I turned on the news and I saw this image. The same day that I was in this refugee camp, there was another child in Syria that was just bombed with his family. His younger brother or his older brother died. And Amran was put in the back of this ambulance. And you guys may have seen this video or these images, but he had blood down the side of his face, and you can see him reach up and he wipes the blood and looks at it with his hand and isn't sure what to do with it, and like kind of wipes it on the chair of the ambulance. And I think the whole world saw this and was broken apart about this image. And I can just tell you, we are lucky. Everyone in this room is so fortunate to be here. And you have a responsibility to do something in the world, to make it better. Maybe it's through business, maybe it's through music, I don't know what it is, but you have a responsibility to make the world better. And so I hope that you'll remember that. Now you may be wondering, whatever happened to Edgar? This little boy that inspired me, that I've thought of literally every day since 2001. And I've wondered the same thing. What happened to him? About a year and a half ago, I decided I needed to find out. And so I bought a ticket and flew to Peru for the first time since I'd last lived there. And I got into Cusco, unsure if I was even going to be able to find him. All I knew was his first name. I knew that he was 9 years old in 2001 and that he shined shoes. That's all I knew. And I went into the main plaza and I had this picture of him I started showing people. And a huge mob of people, probably 60 people or bigger, started gathering around me, wondering why this tall, bald gringo was speaking Spanish and was showing this picture. And through a series of small miracles, I found Edgar. And he still works in the streets. And it was one of the most emotional moments of my life, being reconnected with him. And we spent the day together, sharing and embracing. He took me up to his home that he was so proud to show me. And while we were going up into the hills where his home was, he was telling me his life story. And his parents died just a few years after I met him. His dad died of alcohol abuse, and his mother died giving birth to his youngest brother. And he's now raising his little sister and his little brother. And the home that they live in is a mud home. A home made of mud with a hole in the ground for a toilet. And there was a piece of me that was so discouraged to see how he was living. But I couldn't help but feel inspired by how proud he was of what he had and what he'd done for himself. And I was proud for him. And so now he's actually going back to school. I'm helping him go through a 3-year program where he's learning how to be a tour guide. And he's learned English pretty well, actually, from working with tourists every day, all day in the streets. He knows Cusco better than anybody. And so it's been so fun to see him excelling in school. He sends me his report card every trimester. He sends me this cool picture with his grades, and he's just so proud of it. And it's just been one of the most satisfying relationships that I've had in my life. And he's one of the most active Facebook users on the planet, so we're in really close touch. So, you know, I have a question for you guys, and that is, who is your Edgar? Who is the person or the thing that can inspire you every day and that can remind you every day of how lucky you are and the responsibility that you have in the world? Thanks for letting me come here. I really appreciate it. I know we're a little bit over time, so I don't know that we even have time for Q&A, but maybe we'll... Okay, yeah, we'll do maybe 2 questions, and I'll stick around after, and you guys, anyone that wants to come chat, I'm happy to chat as well. Any questions? Yeah.
So how was your experience with, did you kickstart Cotopaxi? Is that correct?
On Kickstarter?
Yeah.
We didn't actually, although we're using Kickstarter right now. Yeah, we have a
How's that experience going?
Yeah, it's great. We actually did our first Kickstarter in the summer, and we're doing one right now for a llama sweater. It ends tomorrow. We put a goal of 20,000. I think we've done like 380,000 maybe. So for us, it's a small part of our business, a small part of the way we're building the brand, but it's one of the channels that we're using. Kickstarter, I think, is an amazing way to go launch a new company, but I think it's a great way for young businesses that are a little more established to introduce their brand to new people. 80 or 90% of the people that buy on Kickstarter from us are people that didn't know us before. So they were introduced to the brand through Kickstarter. So it's a pretty cool platform. It didn't exist when I was in college. I'm sure I would have used it. I used eBay to launch the pool table business, which now is, I don't think eBay's dead, but it's certainly not what it used to be. So leverage Kickstarter while it's relevant. It won't be relevant forever. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, any other, maybe one more question if there is one? Yeah.
Davis, I'm interested to hear about your experience in Jordan. You talked a little bit about some of the kids, but
yeah.
In terms of entrepreneurship, what did you find there? What were people doing?
No, it was remarkable. Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, it was remarkable. I think what I saw really, in my mind, showed the unconquerable human spirit. In this refugee camp, there's 80,000 refugees in this camp. It's called Zatari. And in Zatari, they basically created what they call the Champs-Élysées. And there are 3,000 businesses on the strip. Literally, a dude making furniture and beds and wardrobes out of like plywood. They all have like this print, like a UN print or something on them. But he's like made them into beds and furniture. There's women making clothing, people with restaurants selling, their local food. People, it's amazing. People are so entrepreneurial. I think one of my favorite quotes of all time is by a man named Dieter Uchtdorf, and he says, "The desire to create is one of the deepest yearnings of the human soul." And that is absolutely true. Every one of us as humans, we have this desire to build, to create. And it may not all be business. It could be art or other things, but for me it is business. And for them, I saw that. The desire to create was something that was inside of them. And it doesn't matter if you're in a refugee camp or if you're here in Salt Lake City. That's something that we all have inside of us, is a desire to build something and create something. So I certainly saw that there, and it was incredibly inspiring to see. So yeah, thanks, great question. All right, well, I've kept you from your food for an extra 10 minutes, so go at it. I'll stick around and happy to take any questions and talk to you guys over the next few minutes.